If you're a homeowner in Ottawa right now thinking about making a move, there's one question that keeps people up at night. Do I buy or do I sell first? And here's the thing about this. If you get it wrong, you could end up either temporarily homeless with your stuff sitting in expensive storage or carrying two mortgages wondering why you didn't plan this better. Both of these are scenarios that I've seen people go through. So today I want to walk you through both options honestly, the risks, the advantages, and the math behind each of them. I'm going to tell you which strategy I think makes more sense in Ottawa's market right now, because the answer actually changes depending on the market conditions. Make sure you stay to the end because there's a third option that many people don't consider that can take a lot of the stress and pressure out of the process. Option number one is the conventional wisdom that you'll probably get from your parents, and that is to sell first. But there's good reason for that. There's some wisdom here. The advantages of selling first is you know exactly how much money you're going to be taking with you to the next property. There's no guessing on the sales price. It also puts you in a stronger negotiating position as a buyer. There's going to be fewer conditions in your offer. You can be more firm on the closing date because you're not waiting for your place to sell, and you're much closer to a cash buyer in the eyes of the sellers. There's also no risk of carrying two mortgages at the same time while you're waiting for your property to sell, which in my experience is the most stressful thing that people go through when they're in this situation. The mortgage qualification is also going to be cleaner. The lender knows that you already have an agreement on the property you're looking to sell, so there's much less uncertainty on their side of things. Now, while this is a good option, there are also risks. Risk number one is you are on the clock. Your closing date on the place that you've sold becomes your deadline for finding a new home unless you want to make other arrangements. If you can't find something in time, you're either going to end up short-term renting, moving twice, or putting your stuff in storage, which can get expensive. There can also be some emotional pressure in this situation. People make rushed decisions when they feel like there's a deadline closing in on them. Option number two is buying first, and I find this is the most emotionally appealing option for many clients. They want to find the dream home, which, let's be honest, is the fun part, lock that in, and then deal with the old one once that's completed. Now, there are some advantages to doing it this way. There's no time pressure in finding your next home. You can take your time, be more patient, and more selective while you wait for the perfect home to come onto the market. The other thing that this can really head off is not having to move twice, not having to pay for expensive storage, and not having to deal with a temporary rental if you can't find something in time if you sell first. It all happens in one clean transition, assuming you can line up the closing dates. Another big advantage here is you're in a position where if you find the right property at the right price, you don't have to wait to sell your property first. You don't risk losing it while you're waiting. I find this is the biggest reason people prefer this as the option. In this market, with the average property being on for about 35 days, there is a reasonable window to sell your property. Now, while this stuff is all great, there are real risks that come along with buying first. The first is that you could end up carrying two properties. Two mortgages, two sets of taxes, two sets of utilities, and paying insurance on both while you wait for the initial property to sell. Now, if your older home sits on the market for a longer period of time, which is especially likely in Ottawa if you're not priced well or you're trying to sell a condo, you're going to be losing real money every month on those carrying costs. The mortgage qualification can also be a little more difficult. The carrying costs on both properties can affect your ratios and what the bank is willing to approve you for. So make sure you have a good conversation with your bank or mortgage broker in advance of trying to do this. There's also a real emotional trap here because there's no two ways about it. If you are in this situation where you're under the gun to sell your property, you are a motivated seller. Buyers can sense that and it affects your negotiating position. A lowball offer may come much closer to working if you're in a situation where you simply must sell in order to get out from underneath those extra costs you're paying every month. When we're talking about double carrying costs, I think it's important to break it down so you have an understanding of how much you're going to be paying every month while you're waiting. Now, as a very quick example, just to illustrate the incredible cost of carrying two mortgages, let's say that your current home costs you $3,000 a month between mortgages, taxes, insurance, utilities, all that stuff. The new home carries a cost of $3,500, let's say. That's $6,500 a month while you're holding both. If there's 2 months of overlap, that's going to be $13,000 in carrying costs you didn't plan for. And then add into that the bridge financing fees if the closing dates don't end up lining up, potential staging and prep for the old home, legal costs, and 2 transactions running close together. The bottom line is double carrying costs, even just for 60 or 90 days while you wait for the initial place to sell, can end up costing you anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 to $30,000 all in. And that's money that you're taking directly out of your equity. I'm not saying it's always the wrong decision. In certain markets and moving from one section of the market to a less desirable section of the market, it can make sense to buy first. Just be really, really careful because you can get trapped in a really ugly situation. Now, option number 3 is something that a lot of people don't consider. There is a middle ground that doesn't get talked about enough, but it doesn't work in all situations. The first one is a conditional offer that specifically is conditional on you selling your existing property. This is called a first refusal, and it is something that you can try to do. Now, this is best case scenario if you're the person who's trying to sell and buy at the same time. You find a home, make an offer right away, conditional on you selling yours within a set time frame, usually somewhere between 30 to 90 days, and it protects you from that dreaded cost of carrying 2 properties. The catch here is in a competitive market especially, sellers are not normally willing to entertain an offer like this. It's a weaker offer because while it creates flexibility for you as the buyer of the new property, it creates uncertainty for the seller. So if they have an offer like yours where yours is conditional on selling your property and another one that's just conditional on something like a home inspection, that other offer is looking much more attractive to them. In fact, even if the other offer is offering a lower price, they may go with that one to avoid the uncertainty of having to wait for you to sell your place. In Ottawa right now, with more inventory and longer days on market though, some sellers are open to a first refusal offer. These are conditions that you never would have seen in 2021 and 2022, but there is more of a window of opportunity for that right now in specific sections of the market. Another thing that's very important to consider when you're in this situation is aligning the closing dates. I think the best case scenario for a lot of people is to list your home, get it sold or very close to sold, conditionally sold kind of thing, and negotiate a longer closing date like 90 or even 120 days, and then shop with confidence. Ottawa's market pace actually supports this right now, with longer closings being more common. You get the certainty of selling first without the panic of a tight deadline to find the next place. Leave yourself some breathing room if you can. This is where working with an agent who understands timing and what's going on in the market really matters. So who should do what? There's no single answer here. It really is a personal decision, and it depends a lot on your financial cushion, your risk tolerance, and what you're going to be moving between. I would say, generally speaking, sell first if you're risk averse, if your budget is tight and you can't afford to carry 2 properties even for a month or 2, or you're not confident your current home is going to sell quickly. Buying first can make sense if you have a financial cushion, like 3 to 6 months of doubling your carrying costs is okay with you. Your current home is in a segment of the market that's moving well, so think freehold townhouses especially right now. And if you found a property that you genuinely are in love with and you just can't stand the thought of losing. The reality is, for most people in Ottawa right now, the best option seems to be selling first, but leaving yourself a long runway so you can align the closing dates and give yourself some flexibility without having to take the risk of potentially carrying 2 properties. Some Ottawa specific considerations is if you're selling a condo and buying a freehold, expect your condo to take longer, price accordingly, and if you buy first, make sure you give yourself a ton of runway to sell. Also take into consideration the seasonal patterns. March to May is the busiest time of year and has the most activity, so listing around this time gives you the biggest buyer pool and the biggest chance to sell quickly. You'll also see more inventory hit the market around this time of year. Ottawa tends to move slower than other fast-paced markets like Toronto and Vancouver, so this is actually an advantage here, and it'll give you more time to coordinate a solution that makes the most sense for you. The bottom line here is there's no universally right answer to this question, but there is a right answer for your specific situation. And it starts with knowing your numbers. Know what your current home is likely to sell for. Know what you can afford on the other side of things, and know what the gap costs if things don't align perfectly. That's not being pessimistic, that's being prepared. This is one of those decisions where having someone walk through the scenarios with you can save you a lot of stress and a lot of money. If you've found value, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. And if you're in the middle of making this decision right now and you're trying to figure out what your home is actually worth in today's market, check out my market updates. They come out every single month. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.